We have 11 amazing restaurants featuring a wide variety for every price range and appetite. South Point's Garden Buffet has something for everyone at unbeatable prices. Or, if hunger strikes in the middle of the night, join us at Coronado Cafe. The American menu offers breakfast, lunch, or dinner 24 hours a day, plus a Chinese kitchen for authentic Chinese dishes from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. From steak and eggs to wonton soup, it's fast and friendly service 24/7. When you need a quick pick-me-up, you can find it at our state-of-the-art Starbucks just inside the main South Point entrance. Order ahead with the Starbucks app for easy mobile order pickups. Or enjoy your favorites in the relaxing dining area anytime, day or night. If you love Mexican food, Baja Miguel's has all of your south-of-the-border favorites. There are dozens of classics to choose from, like fajitas, ceviche, chimichangas, tacos, and more. And for spirit lovers, Baja's colorful non-smoking tequila bar is right outside. Or maybe you're in the mood for seafood. Big Sur Oyster Bar has fresh seafood prepared right before your eyes. Savor freshly shucked oysters, crab legs jambalaya, shrimp and lobster. Beers on tap and a selection of fine wines are perfect to pair with your seafood favorite. Whether lunch or dinner, you'll love this fun atmosphere, located just off the casino floor. Ready to shake things up? Step back in time and treat yourself to one of the oldest restaurant chains in the country. Steak and Shake, famous for original mouth-watering steak burgers and hand-dipped milkshakes in a variety of flavors. For some old-fashioned fun, try Steak and Shake.
Welcome in at Sports by the Book Football Frenzy on a Monday, getting you ready for the final act of Week 11 in the National Football League. I'm Jeff Parles. Ryan McCormick is super well dressed, as he always is on these shows, alongside.
Thank you.
And on the far end, the Montana Grizz.
Not so well dressed.
Oh, you and I both.
This is the way I dress. What can I tell you?
It's my Friday. It's my Friday for the week. I thought a casual Friday day. And
look all right.
McCormick comes in and even has a pocket square today.
Yeah.
We're really making us look bad. Jeez.
Vinny always well dressed too, so he'll be in as well. But Chris, before we get into the week that was, let's just touch this game tonight. Mm-hmm. If what just happened in Dallas is not the encapsulation of what's gone on there this year, I don't know what is. So they attempted to open the roof for the first time in 2 years down there.
Oh, is that
right? It's going to be a beautiful night.
This is news to me. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, beautiful night. It was going to be the roof was going to be elephant. Okay. One problem. A giant piece of sheet metal fell from the roof, landed on the field. Thankfully, no one got hurt. No one untouched. Everyone untouched. So they had to close the roof. So there you go. If that's just not what has gone on for Dallas this year, I don't know what is, Chris.
Jerry Jones, and I said it, I posted it on Twitter the one day. Why is he in the Hall of Fame? I mean, there's one reason. He's made a lot of money. But he's, there's a lot of guys made a lot of money. Should that put you in the Hall of Fame? We're putting Jeff Bezos in the Hall of Fame next? Or Elon Musk?
Let Bezos buy the Jets and win a Super Bowl, then you can be in every Hall of Fame, every Hall of Fame imaginable.
I think if you lead the Jets to a Super Bowl, you're in
every Hall of Fame imaginable for whoever, if anyone ever does that. It might be the same for your team at this point too, Ryan.
Close.
Yeah.
Quick aside, I did power rating. I don't always look at whose ranks where. I just make the numbers. I have Dallas tied with the Giants. As the second or third worst team in the NFL. Boy. Only Carolina is below them.
It was a big day for the Giants. They named Tommy Cutlets the starter again.
I had to lower him a couple points after that.
Yeah, well, again,
almost.
A little surprised that Drew Lock wasn't named the starter, but then I read into his people posted about his contract.
Yeah.
If he plays and plays well, basically you're doubling Lock's contract.
Is that right?
So it's clearly... Let's not pay the guy who's got 2-8. Why would you waste the money?
Yeah.
And if you're DeVito, and if you're the Giants, let DeVito play. The fan base loves him, and you're going to lose a lot of games with him at quarterback. Yeah. So getting the first overall pick might not be a bad thing. Well, obviously not a bad thing. It would be great for the Giants if that happened. But right now, Chris, just on this game tonight, 7:41. I mean, toggle between 7 and 7.5, a little bit of a bite to the under, but really not a ton of intrigue, all things considered, with Dallas coming.
Well, I beg to differ.
Oh, okay.
A lot of teasers.
Oh, that makes sense.
And we, this year, and I checked this morning, we're getting hurt on teasers, NFL teasers. College teasers, and we always thought, don't play college teasers.
No, don't do that.
I mean,
Don't do
it's
that.
your public service announcement. Don't play college teasers. But NFL teasers, we're getting hammered. Matter of fact, last night, the only thing we had to sweat, the only real issue, we wanted to beat Bengals teasers.
You look good for 2.5 quarters, Chris.
Tell me about it. So they tease it. So it was like 1.5 and 2 most of the week.
Yeah.
You tease it up to 7.5 and 8. With a 6.2. There is value. And we had to beat it. I thought we were there. Evidently not. But tonight, a lot of teasers with Dallas. I mean, with Houston. So we need either a blowout or I guess we just need Dallas to win. Is really what we need.
Yeah, I mean,
we got some Dallas teasers too. But not that many.
We'll see. We'll give our thoughts later. This is it's funny. I go through the beginning of the week and just love what intrigue in non-intriguing games.
Yeah.
This was the next to last worst game on the card to me this week.
I agree with you.
Happened to be in prime time. Now, granted, the worst game on the card to me yesterday ended up being entertaining was New Orleans and Cleveland.
It was, yeah.
Where the favorite flip was totally wrong in that game, which
that's a couple times this
that's
year.
At least 3 now in the NFL.
That they have been enamored with Cleveland. I think it's because of like the theoretical defense. If you look through the personnel, they have great personnel on defense. Hasn't always come through.
Yeah, Taysom Hill, fantasy hero yesterday with 3 touchdowns, and that was the margin in the game. And also that last touchdown got the game over the total as well, which you don't normally see totals struggling to get there when both teams are at north of 8 yards per play midway through the third quarter, but you needed the last one. Both teams had over 6 when it was all done. New Orleans, what a year for New Orleans. 2-0 to begin the year. Maybe this is a real deal. 7 straight losses, fired a coach and win 2 straight with the interim right away.
Yeah.
Now, granted, look who they played. But boy, been a lot of interesting things with them. Chris, since you're in here, we gotta go to it. The biggest result of the day, at least from a standings perspective. No, I'm not talking about Kansas City and Buffalo. I'm talking about Baltimore and Pittsburgh, where the Steelers have won 2 games this year without a touchdown. The rest of the league has won 1 total game without a touchdown this year. The Bengals have put up a zillion points against the Ravens in 2 games and got 0 wins. Pittsburgh doesn't put up a touchdown. They win this game. But this is actually, for me, I want to look at this from Baltimore more so than Pittsburgh. Because Baltimore now, Lamar's now 1-4 all time against Pittsburgh. Justin Tucker missed 2 field goals in that game, continuing his big-time struggle this year. And now you're a game and a half behind Pittsburgh, with Pittsburgh winning the first matchup.
Right. It's really almost like 2 games.
Yeah, they'll play again later in December on that weird Saturday because both teams will play
Saturday before Christmas.
Both will play on Christmas against Kansas City and Houston, respectively. But Baltimore's put themselves in quite the hole here with this loss yesterday in a game where you told me before the game, Pittsburgh's going to score less than 20 points. I'm like, oh boy, how much did Baltimore win by? And instead, they lose by 2 in a game that, quite frankly, it feels like every time these teams play now, it's Baltimore missing a 2-point conversion at the end to lose the game completely.
Well, I didn't lower my rankings at all on Baltimore. Okay. I really expected, I said it here and gave my picks on Friday. I expected Pittsburgh to win. I thought the game should be pick 'em. It really looked like a pick 'em game, when you come down to it. Yeah. So I didn't lower my power rating at all on Baltimore. Added probably a little bit, maybe a half a point or a point on Pittsburgh. They're playing with so much confidence now. But if you look at Baltimore, did they use Derrick Henry the way they should have? I mean, I saw some of the morning shows. He didn't touch the ball in the 4th quarter. He wasn't on the field for the 2-point conversion. I mean, that makes no sense to me whatsoever, unless there's something we don't know. And I haven't heard anything. I think it was just coaching decision. And I have tons of respect Harbaugh, both of them. But John Harbaugh, I have a ton of respect for many years. When Belichick was still in the lead, I thought Harbaugh was the second best coach in the NFL. I don't know why they did that. That makes no sense to me. But I don't know. I'd like to hear his reasoning. But I think it's one of those deals. Did they learn their lesson? I mean, Harbaugh's 60 years old. He shouldn't have their lessons down pat by now. But how can you not use Derrick Henry in the fourth quarter and for the 2-point conversion play? I just don't understand.
Yeah, no, I think they did it to themselves in this game, especially not having Derrick Henry on the field in very key situations, but also having 3 and outs on 3 drives, having turnovers on the first 3 plays of 3 different drives, punting within your first 2 sets of downs in 3 other drives. The Ravens didn't run their offense how we have been used to seeing this year, having Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson on the field. That's a completely different monster for defenses to have to scheme against and think about when you're on the field, when you have a 2-time MVP, someone that's a favorite to win a back-to-back MVP, and a future Hall of Famer and one of the best running backs for the past decade in Derrick Henry. So the Ravens need to figure out how to make that offense mesh more consistently in order to beat this Steelers team, especially in Pittsburgh.
Who's the coordinator, the offensive coordinator?
Monken.
Todd Monken.
It's Monken.
Yeah, I mean, he was there last year, and so far he's been having a great year. I mean, they got to have a come to Jesus meeting. Like, what the hell were you thinking? But I can't forgive Harbaugh because at some point you're still the boss. You have to say, why is Henry not on the field? Why is Henry not getting the ball?
Yeah, sometimes you just get beat, even in strange fashion. That's how I kind of thought that went yesterday, more so than anything. I think just Pittsburgh, when it's all said and done, sometimes a team has your number. And Pittsburgh has this team's number.
I think they've won 8 of the last 9.
8 of 9.
Yeah.
And this is in the stretch where Lamar's been as good as anyone. Now, granted, you had the year where he wasn't healthy, where he didn't play in the second game. Last year, of course, the final week of the year, it was Huntley again. It was Baltimore had already had the 1 seed wrapped up. So there's some weird stuff mixed in there. But look, the Steelers, whatever reason, Mike Tomlin gets his team whenever they see Baltimore, they are up for it. The defense always finds a way to play well. And the one thing with Pittsburgh, they had the one critical error in that game, the Russell Wilson interception in the end zone.
Oh, right.
And it didn't come back to bite them. That just shows how good that defense played yesterday.
The defense was great.
That defense somehow got underrated coming into this season by some. I know people that most people on this desk did not underrate them, but by some they got underrated coming into this year. Mm-hmm. Boy, what a defense and a real shot at the 2 seed in the AFC. I mean, maybe even the 1 seed with a break or two potentially.
Yeah, an outside shot. But I said it a couple of weeks ago on Twitter. The guys. I said, they're just a legit team. The guy says, well, they're not as good as, Buffalo, Kansas City. And I said, well, every AFC team has a flaw. Every team. You look at Kansas City. I finally had to knock them down a little bit, even though, not that I didn't like them. That game could have fell too very easily. But how long are we just going to keep overlooking their flaws? Because their offense is not that good. Defense is great. But, we're just, we tend to overlook their flaws. There's another team I lowered quite a bit because we've tended to overlook their flaws. San Francisco.
Oh, Niners are out of my top 10 for the first
time
out of
mine
this year.
Too, yeah.
They will get to them later. Pittsburgh, by the way, is a brutal turnaround with playing on Thursday night this week. Now, granted, it's Cleveland, but we all know when Baltimore and Pittsburgh play each other, the week after is usually not a great game for either team. But again, it is.
Well, I got to tell you too. We're talking about. I love Tomlin. He's done a great job. Wins a lot of games he's not supposed to. He also loses a lot of games he's not supposed to. This is the kind of game I could see them losing.
I don't disagree. Looking at Ryan, I'm sorry to do this. The Bears and the Packers.
Couldn't go to the Chiefs-Bills first?
No, the Packers-Bears shows up on the list first. I'm sorry.
I know.
The Bears did get the money, but they didn't get the outright money. It just talk about having a team's number.
Yeah.
I thought Chicago was clearly the better team the whole day. Love makes another ridiculous mistake in the red zone. You have the stop also on top of it before the final score for Green Bay. Chicago gets in field goal range, and then they just stop playing instead of getting an extra 10 yards, where we know this. You know this better than I do. As accurate as Santos is, he is not a long-range guy. You want that kick to be as short as humanly possible, and mid to high 40s is a longer kick for Santos. Even though he had made a 50-plus yarder in that game, you got to get as close as you possibly can. You can't take the foot off the gas pedal. And part of the reason that kick was blockable is because Santos has a lower trajectory on longer kicks, and Green Bay got a paw on it. Green Bay survives, and the Bears find another way to lose yet again here, Ryan.
Yeah. Oh, man, I'd love to go on a tangent. But for this one, the Bears put themselves in situations to lose, and Matt Eberflus is the head coach that cannot win games. He has the worst win percentage of any head coach in the National Football League that's an active head coach. And even looking at the Sunday night game last night, when the Chargers were in the same scenario, they could have ran the clock out, kicked the game-winning field goal. J.K. Dobbins instead doesn't go out of bounds, doesn't go down. He instead runs for a touchdown, goes up by a touchdown, and then the Chargers defense is put in the same scenario that the Bears defense was put in when they took the lead against the Commanders. What did Jim Harbaugh do? Used one of his 3 remaining timeouts. He actually used the only timeout remaining. But in my point, Matt Eberflus had 3 timeouts remaining against the Commanders, didn't use a single one, and completely folded the game, folded the season. And now I really hope that the Chicago Bears franchise and the players that are going to stay there for years to come, Caleb Williams, use these losses as fuel to propel you for years to come in your career. Use this Packers loss. Use the recent Packers losses for the last 15 years to build your franchise in the right direction. And that starts with the McCaskies to the front office, to the head coaches and everything down. The Chicago Bears need a lot of help, and Sunday was just a culmination of it.
If I could say something, though, I thought, now there's no Eberflus. He's got to go. And I think he's as good as gone. The McCaskies, I think they bear a ton of responsibility. But let me just say this. For the players on the field,
yes,
I thought the Bears looked pretty good. And I thought they may have turned a page. I don't know. But, Eberflus is going to hurt them. You got to use the timeouts that you don't use on defense. I mean, Belichick kind of wrote the book on that. You can always stop the clock on offense, spike the ball, run out of bounds, whatever. You can't stop the clock when you're on defense. That's when you have to use your timeouts. Yeah, so that last game when he didn't use the timeouts, I mean, that was just incredible. But I think there's so many coaching flaws with Eberflus, not getting an extra down to try to get, even 5 yards.
Just 5 yards is a big
5
difference.
yards.
Over 30 seconds left on the clock, and you just let it roll.
No,
how do you do that?
No, it was stupid. It was stupid. And by the way, total ends up going under because of that also. But no, look, bad teams find ways to lose. Poorly. Let me rephrase that because I don't think the Bears are bad.
They're bad.
Poorly coached teams find ways to lose. That's the better way to put it, at least with Chicago at this point. And look, for Caleb Williams, I thought Caleb Williams looked solid yesterday.
He did look good.
He actually utilized his legs. He wasn't holding and staying in the pocket, holding the ball. He was getting out. He's more decisive. Didn't really have any interceptable balls either. I thought he played pretty well. But again, Green Bay just owns this series.
If we can go back a couple months, let's say even 3 months ago, we talked about Caleb Williams entering like the best situation a first-round draft choice, number 1 draft choice has fallen into in many, many years. Yeah. And they've kind of blown it. They have.
And if only it was a different head coach.
There you go. And I mean, I think, again, looking back, but I think a lot of people were saying it at the time, it's time to start anew.
Well, yeah, because you've done this now 3 straight coaching cycles. John Fox brings in Jay Cutler. They draft Mitchell Trubisky. John Fox gets fired. Mitchell Trubisky gets inherited by Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy then drafts Justin Fields. Is fired. It's just the same cycle over and over again. And the Bears need to get themselves out of it. And
that's why I say the McCaskies got to bear a ton of responsibility. For doing this. So I don't know. I mean, I say this all the time. I'm rooting for everybody to do well, even though I need to root against half of them every week. But I want Caleb Williams to be good. I hope he's good. I hope Daniels is good. I hope Drake May is good. Just run the list. Knicks, all these guys. I hope they're good.
I mean, look, the rookie-wise, Knicks had his best game as a pro yesterday, and
He
Denver
looked good.
just eviscerating Atlanta, where we got questions about the Falcons, but that's a different time for that. I know New England has nothing, but Drake May has looked totally fine in his few starts.
He certainly looks like he can get.
Looks like he can play.
Right.
And then Daniels obviously is going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year unless if Washington falls apart. And then Williams, look, when he's looked good this year, you can see the glimpses. It's just a matter of not getting screwed up by his own organization. All right, before we let you go back to work, I want to ask you about Kansas City and Buffalo because you mentioned that you moved Kansas City down a little bit.
Yeah.
What did you do with the Bills after the fact? Because look, if it wasn't for Josh Allen making a superhuman play, that lands 23-21.
Yeah, it's a 2.
And it's a 2. Instead, Allen makes a play that he and maybe 2 other guys are capable of making in this league. And then Buffalo slams the door shut on a backdoor attempt by KC. And quite frankly, Buffalo is the better team for the majority of this game. Yeah. So I think Buffalo covering was the correct result when it was all said and done.
I raised them half a point.
Okay.
I raised them half a point. And I think a lot of it, just has to do with some confidence. And Josh Allen, I know we've kind of penciled in Lamar Jackson as the MVP. Boy, I wouldn't go too far down the list for Josh Allen. This kid he's pretty unbelievable.
Well, Chris, as you mentioned that real quick.
Go ahead.
Because Ryan and I have been all over this for a while now, where if you're the MVP market, really, unless if you're taking a long dart down the board, you can't bet favorites this early in the season. Today, Josh Allen's your betting favorite to be the MVP at no shop.
What's the price?
Plus 150. Lamar's at 2-1. And then Goff. It's funny, Goff throws for over 400 yards.
And he's like an afterthought.
And a complete afterthought after yesterday.
I had to move that TV to where I could hardly see because, it was just, what was I watching?
Well, the funniest part of the whole thing was that, I don't know if you saw this because I only saw it because I just happened to peek down at the monitor, which, by the way, was that one where Brian Kelly is whining about something right now. For reference, all the way on the bottom and below my line of sight, folks, if you're watching at home and on our studio, Dan Campbell challenging a play up by 46. And I was like, all right, well, that's the one team where if you're getting destroyed, they ain't gonna let up.
I know. I know. But actually, Vinny and I were talking about that. Take your foot off the gas.
Well, he at least took Goff out of the game.
Yeah, he did. He did.
Who even played quarterback? I wasn't even paying attention at that point. Oh, it was Hendon Hooker. Oh, good for Hendon Hooker getting in the game. So, all right, Chris, we'll let you go back to work.
All right, guys.
Thank you as always. We're up and
all right, have fun today.
Yeah, we will. Well, we'll do
you
our
got
best
Vinny
with
coming
this game.
in?
Vinny's in at 3:45 after inevitably there's something wrong with one of our power rankings in college.
Oh, okay.
Inevitably, yeah.
Right, interesting to hear.
Yeah, it'll be good.
I'll make sure to tune in.
I know which one will be the one that everyone quibbles with this week on my end. I already know it.
As long as Ole Miss isn't 3.
No, they're done. I should have moved them to number 1 after not playing last week. All right, to tonight's game. Texans 7 in Dallas against the Cowboys. You heard the boss. Dallas is tied in his power rankings. They're tied for the team 30 in the NFL with the New York Giants, who are now starting Tommy DeVito at quarterback the rest of the year. The Texans get Nico Collins back tonight, which, Ryan, there is a huge difference with this team with and without Nico Collins. Now, Houston still has a gigantic amount of problems on that offensive line. It's just the way that it's going to be for them. With the roster they have. That's going to be priority number 1 in the offseason, getting ready to be a potential Super Bowl contender in 2025. They're a playoff team again this year. They're not really a Super Bowl contender unless if Stroud goes nuclear in the playoffs. But getting Collins back is such a big deal. To give Stroud his number 1 receiver back, his best deep threat, Collins is such a unicorn for how big he is, that he's able to be as big of a deep threat as he is. And you're playing a defense that, quite frankly, if you block Micah Parsons, what else are they doing right at this point? Which is a big if for that bad line. But boy, I don't love laying numbers on the road, but it would only be, at least from a traditional sense, a lay of the 7. And if you can find a teaser partner for next week, just eyeballing it right now, not many good teaser partners right now. I guess You want to go double Houston? You want to go Houston this week and Houston next week against the Titans, who have now covered only one game through 11 weeks, Ryan?
Yeah, which I think I saw a stat that it's only 2 instances in the last 30 years that a team has only covered one game in through 11 weeks of a season, and it was the 2007 Ravens was the only other team.
Yeah, and the funny part of it is that the Titans have only been a favorite.
Bad.
The Titans have been a favorite of one game this year, and they're still
1-9.
Still 1-9 against the number.
Yeah. So first, before I get into my stuff, we do have some action in the chat. Joey B is leaning to Houston -7 in the under tonight. Agent 87 says Dallas is dead. John likes Joe Mixon over 90 rushing yards and the Texans to cover the 7. We've got Jim in there saying the Browns are live for Thursday, and laughing at me for pulling out my hair, being a Bears fan. We got Roger Long in here, Lalea, and Jim Twigger. Saying that he thinks Chris needs Dallas. So plenty of action in there. If you guys have any plays tonight, props, any other things you like, subscribe. And after 5 minutes, you can chime in the chat and we will be sure to chat you out or answer any questions that you might have, or at least try to. So, but now getting into my thoughts on this one. Both teams are coming into this one off of a loss. The Texans had a chance. Were leading at halftime against the best team in the NFL, forced 5 interceptions, and then got shut out in the second half. The Cowboys ran into the Eagles, got embarrassed at home, lost 34-6, also got shut out in the second half. So both teams are coming off of being shut out in their last half of football, which is not too good. But to Jeff's point, the Texans are getting Nico Collins back, which is huge for their offense. He has at least a 25-yard catch in, I believe, 4 of his 5 games this season. So a massive addition for that offense. But the Cowboys, going back to last week, had 49 passing yards in 56 plays. They snapped the ball 56 times and had 49 passing yards. That is awful. They fumbled 4 times, and as I said, got shut out in the second half. So the Cowboys did not play good football at all last week in Cooper Rush's first start, their first start without Dak Prescott this season. And the Texans looked good in their first half against the best team in the NFL, and the wheels fell off, and they didn't know what to do against the Detroit Lions, who are a juggernaut, as we know. So no confident play for me in this one. We'll get into props and other stats here in a second, but I do also lean to the Texans -7 in this one.
Oh, boy. It's hard to get excited about this one, but I will say, if you come down to the South Point tonight, there's going to be plenty of reasons to get excited. Be on the lookout for our guy Frank Nicotero and Alex White, both of them out and about. Be on the lookout here tonight if you come down to the South Point for the game. Frank and Alex might be more entertaining than the game. Let's be real with ourselves on this one. All right, let's go to the anytime touchdown market, because this is the only spot that I think there's places we can have some fun with here tonight, at least the betting perspective of this. Joe Mixon, you're laying almost $2 to score an anytime touchdown. You want to throw in a parlay? I can't get on you. He probably is scoring tonight. Nico Collins is +125. Rico Dowdle's +135. Isn't Dallas going to get close enough to the end zone to have a rushing touchdown?
That's a good question.
I don't know about that. CeeDee Lamb's at +215. Dalton Schultz at +280. Texans defense, what is hilarious.
Yeah.
Do not bet that. Do not bet that at that price.
Not worth it.
If they do it, fine. But do not bet a defensive special teams at 3-1. That is just, quite frankly, either the liability is insane on that position getting built, which I would hope would be the case over at DraftKings, or it's just scared bookmaking. One or the other.
We've kind of seen the latter the last few weeks.
Which I would very much hope it's the first one, but unfortunately, I'm not so sure that that's the case. Jalen Tolbert's at +370. Jake Ferguson's at +370 also. Zeke's contribution last week was fumbling a would-be touchdown, +380. +450 on it. What are these prices on the defensive special teams in this game? That Dallas one should be like 9-1. Stroud at +550, but now we get to the part of the operation which is now interesting here. You can take some darts down the board on Houston Texan auxiliary wide receivers tonight. You want to take John Mechie, who scored his first NFL touchdown a week ago, to score again at +750? No problem with that. What was Xavier Hutchinson? It was 8-1, right?
Right there. Yeah.
I think I saw about 8-1 earlier today. Xavier Hutchinson. Now it depends on him being active, but if he is, no problem with that. Robert Woods, I don't love 10-1, but you know what? Those guys who are not Tank Dell or Nico Collins are the guys to bet tonight if you want to throw darts for your Houston Texan anytime touchdowns. The one that I would love for the books to offer, but will not get offered, I would love it if someone offered a Trey Lance touchdown, anytime touchdown tonight. Because if this gets ugly, there is no excuse for Trey Lance not being in the game in the fourth quarter. If this is like it was last week where Philly destroyed Dallas, if Houston does the same, Trey Lance probably should be the starter the rest of the way for the Cowboys. What do you have to lose at this point? If he stinks, he stinks. Who cares?
Yeah.
Better draft position. But I would be the one that I would love to see offered, but of course, no one is offering that right now.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you in the Trey Lance scenario, but I'm also wondering why he's not starting already. And I think it's because of Jerry Jones being an egomaniac, and he wants to say, yeah, I brought in Cooper Rush. He's been the backup. He's been successful as the backup. But then you also trade for Trey Lance and sit him as a backup when you have the same look ahead to your schedule. You're not going to make the playoffs. Why not see what you have in a former third overall pick? Just the starting Cooper Rush and forgetting about Trey Lance doesn't make much sense to me. But it is Jerry's world. And then anytime touchdowns. So I do like Nico Collins tonight. I am a little hesitant that it is his first game back, but he makes their offense go and is the guy that CJ Stroud trusts. So Nico Collins plus 125, I will be playing in 30 minutes because I'll wait for the show to be over. But and then I also do like CeeDee Lamb. I know that he had one of his worst games of his career last week in the first start with Cooper Rush, but it's still CeeDee Lamb. He's one of the best receivers in the National Football League. We'll get into his prop numbers a little later, which I also like something else. Two other things actually with CeeDee Lamb. But if the Cowboys offense is going to score, if they're going to move the ball, you have to think it's going to be through CD because they have not been able to run the ball at all this season. So anytime touchdowns, I'm looking at the top two receivers, Nico Collins and CeeDee Lamb, for anytime touchdowns. So
it is, again, just for Dallas, the season from hell all the way through. Now, again, I didn't think they were a playoff team coming into the year, but this has been even worse than I think anyone could have drawn up, where after could they pull the upset? Yes, it's the National Football League, but after they more likely than not lose tonight and go to 3-7. I mean, we only get to see them two more times in national TV windows. Thanksgiving, which could be DeVito versus Lance, which honestly could be very humorous in all honesty.
This is the perfect Thanksgiving to enjoy time with your family.
Yes, and then the following week, because I don't know if you saw this, the Bengals and the Cowboys can't get flexed out of Monday night because ESPN Disney is doing a special Simpsons altcast, and they're already doing the voicers for it. So they can't move it out.
Nice.
Really, really good all the way around.
America's team.
Yeah, hey, look. There are a lot of people who don't mind watching Dallas lose, though. Let's just go with that, Ryan. Let's look at the quarterbacks tonight. CJ Stroud, Cooper Rush. So I'll just ask you this. There's nothing on the Stroud end that makes much sense to me. If you want to take a plus price, yes, interception, I don't mind that because even though Dallas's defense is not any good, they still have guys in the secondary who will ball hawk and will take opportunity, especially now with probably feeling the pressure. Hey, we got to score potentially on defense. You will see a lot more chances taken by defensive players on Dallas. So I don't mind taking Stroud with that over half of an interception tonight on the Houston end. I don't know how you can bet Cooper Rush props. I really don't. Last week was so bad. 2 yards in it. Forget 2 yards of completion. 2 yards in attempt last week, which is as you and I probably couldn't do that. But if you put an offensive lineman at quarterback in the NFL, they'd probably be able to do that. So it was really, really ugly from Rush a week ago. But I don't know how you can bet any of his props, unless if you want to bet unders across the board and say, hey, this is going to be so bad by the middle of the game that Mike McCarthy's going to have no choice but to put him on the bench for the second half. That would be the only thing I'd consider if you want to go under on most things, except for the interception prop.
That it would be a really weird rooting angle, though, for this game. If you're just rooting for the Cowboys to get absolutely bludgeoned,
angle,
and then Trey Lance to come in some point in the third quarter. But looking at these two guys with these numbers, C.J. Stroud is 8-2 to the over this year on his passing attempts. Depending on how you think the game script goes, you either can play the over, the 30.5, or the under. I would be looking at the under. Again, because I don't know what we are going to get out of Nico Collins in this game. I also anticipate the Texans to be leading for the majority of this game and not need to throw the ball 100 times. And they also have Joe Mixon in the backfield. So I don't necessarily like the over on the 30.5 attempts, but CJ Stroud has done it in 8 of 10 games this year. 5-5 on his completions this season, 4-6 to his passing yardage, 3-7 on the passing touchdowns. Does not have an anytime touchdown this year, is 4-6 to the yes on his interception. And then looking at his longest completion, massive number of over 37.5 yards, 4-6 this season. So 4 overs, 6 unders, only one such over in the last 2 weeks without Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs. And it was a screen to Joe Mixon. So without Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins to take the top off, he was not getting that long completion. And now that you have Nico Collins back, who, as I said, has at least a 25-yard catch in each of the games this season, you get it back. So I will be taking the under 37.5 and be getting a little bit of a middle. If we want to go to Houston Texans receiving or player props, skilled player props, I had mentioned Joe Mixon. He is at 21.5 rush attempts, 5-2 this season with 4 straight games of 24-plus rush attempts, 25-24, or 24-24, 25-24, I think is how it went. So Joe Mixon, I think, is going to be a huge part of the game script tonight for the Texans. Just 22 is a lot to ask for. So I'm not playing that over with the juice, but I do like it over, just not playing that one. So Nico Collins, 4-1 to his longest reception of 26.5 yards in this game. Again, a 25-yard plus catch in every game that he's played in this season. So going over Nico Collins' longest catch, under CJ Stroud longest completion, you get a happy middle. 30-yard catch by Collins gets you both. So there's that. And then looking at Dalton Schultz, 7-3 to the over on his receptions this season, over in 6 of the last 7, 32 targets in the last 6 games. But again, some of those were without Nico Collins, some of those without Stephon Diggs, some of those were without both. So I'm a little hesitant on Dalton Schultz overs tonight, being that Nico Collins is coming back. For these 3, my favorite would be Joe Mixon. As who was it in the chat that likes it? Let me make sure I got the right. John likes Joe Mixon over 90 rushing yards. I like it as well. So those are my prop plays for the Texans and the quarterbacks.
I'll go off of the sheet to Tank Dell. His longest reception is over 20.5, over or under, whichever way you want to go. That would be the way I would look. There are going to be some big plays in this game. It's just a matter of picking the right Texan to go over their longest reception, because I look, this could very easily be a game where Stroud throws 4 touchdowns and throws 2 picks. Yeah. Because Dallas's defense is just it's the nature of the beast. Their defense is going to have to overcommit to trying to force turnovers, which again, Dallas usually overcommits to try to force turnovers to begin with, knowing Diggs. Obviously, Bland is not there, but Bland was the king of that a year ago with all those pick sixes, most in a season in NFL history. But Dell would be the guy I think I'd look to attack, because that number is, I thought the number should be about 22.5, 23.5. So okay. 20.5, I'm good with that on Dell. On the Dallas side of things, good luck. That's all I'll say on this, Ryan. Rico Dowdle is the running back that we're looking at here, spotlighting at 53.5 rushing yards with 12.5 attempts. 75.5 on the rush plus receiving. If you have any idea how they're going to utilize Dowdle tonight, good on you. The only guy you can even remotely approach is CD. because you know that it will be a force feeding of CD here tonight, like it was trying to be last week, and then the sun got in his eyes, and that was that. I think he can go over 5.5 receptions. I would not bother with the yardage because this could be one of those weirdo games where Rush has no ability to throw the ball more than 15 yards down the field, and that Lamb has just a bunch of 4, 5, 7-yard catches here. So Lamb over receptions would be the only thing I'd look at. And then Jake Ferguson, 4.5 receptions, Big Juice under 35.5 receiving yards, longest reception 14.5. Would only look to Lamb over receptions on the Cowboys end of things here tonight.
Yeah, for me, Rico Dowdle only has one game this season where he reached the over on his attempts. He had 15. He has 3 games this season with 12 carries. It, again, goes back to what you think the game script is going to be. And I think if you're the Dallas Cowboys and you think that you're going to come in and win this game, it has to be by running the football. You have to go about it the same game script that you did when you went into Pittsburgh and beat the Steelers. You have to control the pace of play. You have to run more plays than they do. Keep their offense off the field. The Texans' offense, actually, both of these teams, over the course of the season, are top 10 in plays run per game. Last week with Cooper Rush, the Cowboys were the 5th worst team in football, running 52 plays with Cooper Rush. So they did not get to run their offense the way they wanted to with Cooper Rush compared to Dak Prescott. And that's a lot to ask for. When your team is 30th in rush attempts per game, 31st in rushing yards per game, 31st in touchdowns, rushing touchdowns, 31st in rushing yards per attempt. Basically one of the worst teams in the National Football League running the football. And then you lead the league in pass attempts. It's a lot to ask your offensive coordinator to kind of make that shift, especially when the offensive coordinator has only ever been an assistant, a consultant, a quarterback's coach, and then an offensive coordinator after being a quarterback as a player. So the offensive coordinator only sees through the eyes of quarterback and only runs it as a quarterback. So the Cowboys are going to need to shift that tonight if they hope to stay in this game, stay competitive in this game. You have to keep Joe Mixon, Nico Collins, and CJ Stroud off the field. You have to run through your guys, and that is going to be through CeeDee Lamb, who last week, Jeff had mentioned they did try and force feed, and then the sun got in his eyes. But it was just the 4th time in his career that he was held under 6 yards per reception. His entire career, he's played 75 games. 4 held under 6 yards per catch. So they weren't pressing the field. They weren't pressing the sticks to try and get CeeDee down the field. So that needs to shift. But then looking at these numbers specifically, so CeeDee Lamb over 5.5 receptions, 4 straight overs, has 7+ targets in every single game this season. So I don't fault you if you think CeeDee Lamb goes over that 5.5 catches. That reception yards, 7 and 2 to the over. Back-to-back unders. Dak got hurt. Cooper Rush came in. Cooper Rush starts last week. Back-to-back unders. CeeDee Lamb does not appear to have the relationship with Cooper Rush, but that's why it has dropped from being in the low 70s to now 57.5 yards. So it's still CeeDee Lamb. If you think he can get one massive chunk play for you, I don't fault you for going over his receiving yards, but not a confident play for me on that one. And then looking at Jake Ferguson, 5 and 4 on his catches this year, 4 and 5 on the yardage, 3 and 6 this season on his longest reception. Cooper Rush just isn't throwing the ball downfield these last 2 weeks, so I would be a little hesitant on both of these longest receptions.
Texans 7-41 here tonight. Still just not a lot of movement. Again, as Chris said, his teaser liability is the big deal here tonight for the book on this one. All right, we'll take a quick break and we get back. College football power rankings. Maybe a look ahead to some big games, both college and NFL. Of course, Indiana playing their biggest game in program history. What a sentence we all expected to say 3 months ago, right,
Exactly,
Ryan?
exactly.
To talk about that, Vinny Magliulo will join us when we get back as well. Sports by the Book Football Frenzy on a Monday.
If you're celebrating a special occasion or just love fine dining, you're in the right place. Come experience the crown jewel of South Point restaurants, Michael's Gourmet Room.
Welcome.
With over 600 different types of wines and magnificent dishes prepared tableside, you'll revel in the rich classic Vegas decor and the best black tie service in the world. This intimate gourmet room has earned accolades galore. Come to Michael's Gourmet Room for an unforgettable dining experience. Another famous restaurant is the Silverado Steakhouse, where you'll find the charm and service that discerning patrons require. From top quality steaks and chops to fresh seafood and desserts, you'll love the award-winning wine list and menu at Silverado Steakhouse. Steak lovers have even more options with primarily prime rib. Catering to hearty appetites, the menu features a variety of flavorful prime rib cuts, dry-aged to ensure tenderness, and then seasoned and slowly roasted. Although prime rib is our specialty, it's not the only thing on the menu. There's something for everyone. And if you're craving a taste of Italy, come experience delicious Italian cuisine and the attentive service at Don Vito's. Our culinary team starts with the freshest ingredients and transforms them into traditional favorites. And don't forget Italian desserts. Don Vito's. Savor the taste of Italy. Finally, if sushi is more your style, join us at the popular Zenshin Asian restaurant and sushi bar, where we're serving up the freshest sashimi, nigiri, and sushi rolls. And beyond the sushi, an exciting contemporary Asian cuisine menu, plus a variety of specialty drinks, Japanese and domestic beer, wine, and sake. Balance your hunger with Zenshin.
Welcome back in Sports by the Book. Football Frenzy on a Monday. I'm Jeff Parles. Ryan McCormick's alongside. Vincenzo will be with us. The high-end dress side of the counter will be to the right, and then casual Monday, Friday will be over here in a few moments from now. All right, college football power rankings. We do these every Monday, and I'm just going to tell you this. I don't know what to do with a lot of these teams that are in the middle at this point. I have no idea. I have no idea what to do with the A&Ms of the world who didn't cover against New Mexico State this weekend. I don't know what to do with these ACC teams, the SMUs, the Miamis. I don't know what to do with any of the Big 12 teams at this point. I have no clue. So I'll just say this. I initially, when I did this on Saturday night in my first go of this, I had a different number 10. I had SMU at number 10 initially. But I went back through it, and I know that they would be an underdog, and I'm kind of doing this a little bit differently right now. Let's look at teams that I want to bet, potentially in a college football playoff circumstance. And Tennessee I knocked out because, you know what? When push comes to shove, Tennessee's showing you who they are. Their one good win this year was against Alabama at the weakest of their powers, basically, at this point, in their own building by a touchdown in a game that Alabama probably still should have won. Tennessee has shown you who they are. They still may make the playoff, but they're going to be a team I want to bet against if they get to the postseason. I have Boise State at 10. I know that's not actually, no one else will have them in their top 10, and probably properly so. But the way that this is going to go down in the postseason for me is they're going to be too big of an underdog on the road against the number 5 seed, assuming they win the Mountain West title at this rate. They might even be the 11 seed if we get an Arizona State winning the Big 12. Or actually, it wouldn't be the 11 seed. It'd be the 4 seed in that scenario. And then this is all thrown on its head because then they might get Ohio State, and then, neutral Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl might be a problem then. But they're 10. They still, look, I know Travis Hunter's probably going to win a Heisman. I still would vote for Genti today. Still would. Indiana's at 9. They didn't play. They didn't move. I had them at 9. I had them at 10 last week. Just moved them up on the virtue of moving Tennessee out. Then 5 through 8, I had basically the same. I didn't change anything because Bama beat Mercer. Who cares? Penn State beat Purdue. Mercer might be better than Purdue at this point. Not really, but Purdue's highlight in that game was their wide receiver lining up 2 yards outside of the end zone for the most wide open touchdown of all time, and he was out of bounds by 2 yards. Penn State's at 7. Notre Dame's at 6. I got to say this. I know they didn't cover against Virginia. Virginia got in the back door, but Notre Dame's just beating the heck out of everybody right now. And Vinny brought this point up on Friday. Notre Dame would be a bigger favorite today against Northern Illinois than they were when they lost them in week 2. That just shows how much Notre Dame has vaulted in the rankings. It also shows that Northern Illinois has not been as good as we thought they were going to be, but that's credit to the Irish. Texas at 5. Georgia doesn't move. I keep them at 4. I thought that had more to do with the fact that Tennessee was not as good as most thought they were, than Georgia being back. Ole Miss stays at 3. They didn't play. Ohio State stays at 2. Ohio State is just sluggish early in these games. That is one thing to keep in mind, especially going into this week and inevitably when they play in a college football playoff and potentially a Big Ten title game rematch against Oregon. They're number 2. And then the Ducks, boy, they were fortunate. They were fortunate. They very easily could have lost in Madison on Saturday night, but they found a way, got it done. And then number 1 for the Oregon Ducks here for me still. And it's tight between them and the Buckeyes, man. It's so close. If Ohio State had won that game, they would be 1. But because Oregon won that game by the slimmest of margins, they still slightly stay ahead of the Bucks for me.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I got the same 1 and 2. And I also favor Dan Lanning over Ryan Day. So that's another reason why I have Oregon over Ohio State. But yes, to go to my top 10, at number 10, I do have Texas A&M. I do get that they did not cover this past weekend, but this is teams on paper getting rated. So I do have Texas A&M as the 10th best team in the country.
No problem with
honestly, just I may have a little bit of an SEC bias. I 100% think they're the best conference in college football. Fault me for it if you want to, but Texas A&M at 10. Indiana at number 10, number 9, they were 10 last week. Just like Jeff, I had to move Tennessee out because they are more than likely going to be out of the college football playoff. So Indiana moves up to 9, Notre Dame at 8. We have Lalea in the chat saying Notre Dame isn't playing anybody, but they do have something to prove. Losing to NIU earlier this year, put that target on their back for the excuse for the committee to leave them out of the playoff, and they have needed to win games the way that they have to prove that they should be one of the top 12 teams in the country. And their roster is a top 10 in the country. So number 7, I have Ole Miss. They had a big swing this season, dropping out of the top 10, and with the win over Georgia, jumping back in, and then not playing this past week. But their defensive line is one of, if not the best in college football. So that is going to be what propels them through the playoff if they make it, getting into the farther rounds. But I do have Alabama as a better team above them, as well as Texas and Georgia from the SEC. I think those are the top 4 teams in the SEC, but I do have Alabama, Texas, and Georgia above Ole Miss by at least. Alabama's a half a point. Texas and Georgia are 1.5. Penn State didn't move. They stayed at 5. They handled their business. Texas did move beneath Georgia because they did not beat Arkansas in the fashion that I thought was deserving of them to stay in the top 3. So Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia is my top 3.
Texas kind of messed around. They did win by 10. Yep. Didn't cover any numbers, so it didn't matter if you got Arkansas in the middle of July here or on Saturday morning. You got there regardless with the Hogs on Saturday. Let's bring Vincenzo in. Let's bring him in. Vinny, I want to ask you. Oh, there we go. Beautiful. Nice slide step in from Vinny. I want to ask you about this. Forget our top 10s for a second, because I want to ask you about this race in both the ACC and the Big 12 right now, where SMU had to get a stop on the last drive of the game to beat Boston College. I know they punched it in, made it 10 at the end, but
it was close.
That was a tight game with SMU. Miami, we know about them all year, where they just played tight game after tight game, and they finally got burnt for putting their hand on the stove for too long against Georgia Tech. Clemson, boy, that game on Saturday against Pitt was totally ridiculous, where I didn't even think Pitt played well and had a lead late and then just forgot how to play defense on Clemson's last drive, where Klubnik, untouched from 50 yards out, to bail Clemson out.
By the way, just to interrupt.
Yeah, please.
Up until that point, Clemson had, I think, 10 yards of rushing.
You overshot it. It was 7.
All right.
7.
Make me a liar for 3 yards.
but 7 yards rushing before that clip.
Did they lose 3 yards? Because I think it was 10.
It might have,
okay.
Yeah.
No, but I'm just saying.
That's what McDonough said on the broadcast
think about
beforehand.
that.
Craziness.
Right?
And then the Big 12, we finally beat BYU, everyone. We finally did it. It took us until the middle of November to beat BYU, and it took them getting unbelievably unlucky on a quarterback pooch punt and nailing a BYU player in the helmet, and then Kansas cashing it in.
They won in dramatic fashion a week before. Maybe and the week before probably did take more out of them emotionally than we thought. I mean, certainly did get with Utah, but I didn't think that it would have as big an effect. But obviously it did.
And then Colorado put it on those Utes.
Yes, they did.
Dominated that game, and then the result that actually really changes thing in that conference, that in a game that kind of slid under the radar of its importance.
Arizona State
beat up Kansas State, beat them up. Now it ended up being 24-14, but that was 24-0. That game was a destruction until Arizona State kind of took the foot off the gas. And all of a sudden, Vinny, BYU and Arizona State win, and you're in the driver's seat. BYU would be in, period. But Arizona State with a win would just have to beat flailing Arizona in the Territorial Cup to make the Big 12 title game in year one in the conference, amazingly enough.
Well, I mean, you've got potential or the likelihood of conference title games that nobody really anticipated, right?
Oh, yeah.
Certainly, you could make a case for Clemson. Right, I think obviously
and Miami
name value, Miami name brand recognition. I think SMU people were trying to figure out, what were they going to do. I really did. I think SMU as a program in the last couple of years has been on the rise. It's going to continue to be on the rise because there's so much backing, there's so much money there to back that program. But certainly the Big 12, a much bigger surprise with BYU. And Arizona State right now, I mean, you've got those teams in the driver's seat. So, I mean, you're looking at it too. So, and we get asked this, what about in rankings? And again, polls don't determine prices because, again, and even guys, what you're saying here, you look at there are going to be teams that have a higher power rating that are not going to make the playoffs this year. It's not like the top 12 power-rated teams are going to be the 12 teams that make the playoff. It's just not the format. So that's why, so many people, people will be questioning, well, how did this, how does this team favorite over that team? And again, just give us the matchups. I'll give you the prices, and then you decide. I mean, but that was the case when there were 4 teams, and it's going to be the case when there are 12 teams. But the biggest difference is that there are going to be teams like a Tennessee is going to be still higher rated than a couple of teams probably or more that make it to the playoff given the format.
It is quite the race. To the end
it's
here.
Great.
And it's funny because the whole debate, and I find it funny that you brought up the SEC bias part of it, where if you just look at power ratings, just look at the league, I mean,
but you have to take into consideration that competition,
sure,
because the way
100%,
with the way we rate teams, you power rate conferences too. I mean, outside of a couple of games, again, the SEC does it every year. When you look at some of these games and some of these matchups that they're playing late in November, and you're like, wait a second, how'd that matchup get on there? But the reality is that those games, week in and week out, are just tremendous games, and that's why it's really there's no minor leagues for the NFL. From a farm system type look, the reality is college football is SEC and the Big Ten are the are the feeders for them.
Well, it's so funny because the talking head debate today has been the SEC team, like they've been attacking Indiana in part because they've played a weaker schedule, and look, that's going to happen. In these new mega leagues, sometimes you're going to see teams stack up where Indiana's going to end up playing 7 of the bottom 8 in the conference, which, look, you still got to win the darn football games that Indiana has.
Great point, Jeff.
Yeah.
Because there's 18 schools now in the Big Ten?
Yes.
Okay, so it's the Big 18.
Well, it's actually going to
Okay.
be, yeah. I mean,
There's 32 teams in the NFL. Are all 32 teams monsters? I mean, right?
no, I'm with you on this.
There you
really,
go.
100%.
Right? I mean, you're exactly right. Spot on.
And it's weird to me that Indiana is the one that's getting attacked here, where it kind of felt like that maybe just because of my own thoughts on this, I did not think the Big 12 teams were getting attacked enough for their lack of quality, personally. And now that BYU is lost, we don't have to worry about that because it's a one-bid league period at this point. They're not putting a 2-loss Big 12 team in. And if BYU wins the conference at 12-1, guess what? They should be going regardless of what I think of them. The ACC has kind of gone to that point as well, where I think the top of the ACC is actually quite good. I think SMU has proven to be a real team.
Yes.
Miami is unbelievably talented. It's just the crystal ball factor with them. And I know a lot of people dislike Dabo, but
Clemson's right there.
Clemson's well coached, even though again, I think they're lacking a little bit of talent. But it's so interesting to me where Indiana, like, the way that the narrative's going, it feels like if Indiana gets clocked by Ohio State, that people are going to be looking for every reason to say, oh, they're 11-1, but that's a Fugazi 11-1, and I don't think that's fair for them because they just lined up and played their schedule, and other than Michigan, he beat the crap out of everybody for 10 straight weeks.
Yeah, I kind of am on the other side to where if Indiana loses this weekend, does not cover, it's 12.5 right now.
Yeah, 11, 12 and a half now?
12.5.
12.5 now.
So they bet Ohio State initially then, right?
Actually, we
Or you
South
opened
Point opened it higher.
So you open higher.
12.5.
Okay, so say Indiana loses, Ohio State handles their business, wins by 18 in this one.
Okay.
And then you have an 11-1 Indiana team that only ranked opponent was Ohio State, lose by 2 possessions plus. And then you're going to have the conversation of keeping out a 2+ loss SEC team in Georgia, Tennessee, Ole Miss. LSU can't be in it anymore.
LSU's done.
But if A&M beats Texas, how are you going to leave A&M out of the playoffs?
So that's the most intriguing scenario left on the board now, period.
Well, yeah, because then you have the entire SEC tie.
A&M plays Texas in College Station, no less, which I don't know about you, Vinny, but I would imagine A&M is going to come a short favorite in that game, right? Assuming everything's equal through the next week.
Texas and A&M.
In a likely night game, no less.
No, Texas should still be favored. I mean, Texas
Small,
on a
though,
power
right?
on a power rating, yeah, it'd be less than a touchdown. But I mean, they're.
How much higher do you have Texas than A&M?
I've got 9 points on a neutral.
Oh, okay. So then
that's my power rating.
So that'd probably be what, based off home field, 4.5 still
4 or
with
5.
Texas, 4.5, 5. Yeah, it will be a very interesting debate. And the one scenario where, I mean, the other thing that could happen is what if Indiana goes to the shoe, wins outright, then
there's no question.
No question. But then I'm going to be honest with you. The team that seems to be escaping all criticism whatsoever here, and if you look at their resume, and I know your power ratings has this team lower than ours does, Vinny, what has Penn State done to deserve to be in this thing?
Well, you know what, people
in comparison to some of these other teams.
But that's the same conversation with Indiana.
I know. Well, that's the thing.
Indiana, you can't take away what they've
Correct.
done. You can't. You could have a similar conversation about Penn State. You could have it about Notre Dame.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. Absolutely.
Right?
They have the worst loss on the board for anyone here.
So the reality is that the SEC is going to have the most bids.
Likely, yes.
Okay. And again, it's the strongest conference.
Yeah.
Then I think the Big Ten.
Yeah.
The other thing about those two conferences is they're more stable too. Don't forget, there's still talk of teams leaving the ACC and the Big 12, which does not help their recruiting and transfer portal activity, because where are they going to go? Right? Well, where do they want to go? They want to go to the two conferences that are at the top, right? The SEC and the Big Ten. So you, again, just like we have from March Madness, somebody is going to be on the outside looking in and saying we deserved it more than so-and-so. But you also had more opportunities this year to play your way in and take care of your business, to play your way in than ever before. So it's, again, there's multiple teams. And the reason I think that sentiment exists for Indiana is because they came out of nowhere in a lot of people's eyes.
Well, again,
right? You're going to say the same thing about BYU. Oh, well, if they win the conference championship game, well, then they played their way in.
Well, that's the thing. If Indiana and Penn State had the resume had flipped the two resumes and flipped the helmets, or just flipped the helmets, I mean, it's reversed at this point. And I will say this, just throwing this out there, I think Penn State has a real chance of losing this weekend. I'm just throwing that out there. I know Minnesota is a big dog, like same size dog that Indiana is at Ohio State. That is a weird place to play.
Yeah,
it's going to be frozen. Now, granted, Penn State can deal with the cold, but look, Penn State has had some weird outings away from Beaver Stadium this year. So don't be too shocked that Penn State needs a late score in order to escape that game, like they needed in LA against USC. And remember, Howler was hurt. They were down at halftime at Wisconsin. They were in big trouble, and they came out of that hole, and that was credit to them for sure.
And the other thing that happens, too, is you could say that and credit them.
Yeah.
But there are people that are saying that Oregon escaped the other day. The thing about it is this. Here's where a lot of people get torqued about in Indiana. They weren't in the conversation at the beginning of their conversation at the beginning of the year. But here they are. Mm-hmm. Penn State was in the conversation at the beginning of the year with the caveat they have to beat Michigan and Ohio State just like they have forever, right? Ohio State's been – whoever is in the conversation at the beginning of the year, okay, doesn't get that kind of criticism, right? Unless, of course, it's a complete reversal of what they did. But it's Indiana because, well, what? Oh, my God, they shocked us. That's good, though. Yeah. It's good for the sport, and it's certainly good for business. But that's what I think just about everybody – and we knew that this is Ryan's up here right now. Every one of those schools in your top 10 was talked about at the beginning of the year. We knew that Ole Miss would be better. Texas A&M figured to be better too. Who's the surprise on that list?
Indiana.
Well, it's Indiana. Yeah.
There you go.
And, well, I will say that in A&M, like the question with A&M coming in was how long is it going to take for Mike Elko to get the stink of the Jimbo era out?
Sure.
Right. It was never a question of talent.
Yeah, absolutely.
They always had great talent.
Jimbo had terrific talent.
I never questioned that, but I had credit to Elko. Look, A&M could have very easily had their season fall apart after losing week 1 to Notre Dame. And they could have if they went 8-4, no one would have been all right, you know what? Trending in the right direction next year's the year for Mike Elko. The fact that they are very much in this, and again, I think they have a real shot to beat Texas and produce the chaos of chaos in
there's
the
a team
SEC.
Playing tremendous right now that's not going to get in, that nobody wants to play. South Carolina. We talked about it.
South Carolina's got no chance.
No, they don't have any chance. Yeah. But my point is, though, if you're talking about a play, there's not a playoff team in the country that wants to play them right now. I could tell you that.
Yeah.
What would Indiana be against South Carolina?
Indiana?
Neutral. You'd make them what, 3.5?
I got Indy 3 against South Carolina. Where's my South Carolina? I've got them. I got to pick them.
Pick. Okay. I know you had South Carolina high, so then you have Indiana pretty high too. Then so
yeah.
By the way, I will say, my alma mater, who is looked at as a nothing burger at this point, almost winning.
Great game.
That was as good of a game as there was on
terrific,
Saturday.
A terrific game, and it kind of
came out of nowhere because the first half it looked like South Carolina was going to run them out of the building.
But that's that. But look, again, these are. Give us the matchups. We'll give you the prices. Make your choices.
I can't wait because we're in the home stretch now.
Yeah,
2 regular season weeks, a conference championship week, and then that NFL Sunday. We'll know that second Sunday of December where everyone's going, who gets the home games, and who gets the buys to New Year's Day and such. It'll be a heck of a lot of fun. All right, that's all we got for you. We went over, but it's always a great discussion with Vinny on these college football Mondays. Again, Texans 7-point favorites against the Cowboys. We're going mostly props here tonight.
One fun prop I did find on DraftKings.
Please go for it.
I'm not sure where else you'll be able to find it, but CD Lamb over a half rushing yard plus 115.
Seems low.
He has 11 carries this season for 55 yards. He has a carry in each of the last 2 weeks. You just need a yard for a carry for CD Lamb.
Yeah, just avoid the 7-yard jet sweep loss, which is always in play as well. All right. Well, we'll see you again on this show on Thursday. Interesting AFC North matchup. Tough spot for Pittsburgh going to Cleveland. Kind of the Browns Super Bowl at this point is knocking off this division rivals. They, of course, already beat Baltimore this year at home. So trying to go 2 for 2 at the
What is that scheduling, though? Last Thursday we had AFC North matchup, and this Thursday we have an AFC North matchup?
No, last week was Washington and Philly. 2 weeks ago was Cincy and Baltimore.
Yeah. NFC East.
You're in the right. You're in the right ballpark. At least it wasn't like 5 weeks ago.
Yeah,
that's close. That was a heck of a game, too, between Baltimore and Cincy. But we're back then. But keep your sports betting appetite alive and well. 9 a.m. the next 2 days. Kenny White, Alex White. Get you ready for the day in college hoops, the week ahead in all football, and a lot more NBA, NHL on Sports by the Book. Tuesday and Wednesday at 9 a.m. We'll see you again, Ryan, on Thursday. Vinny, great work. Jerry and Drew Dog. Sean on his off day. Always a pleasure. I'm Jeff Parles. We'll see you again next time. Sports by the Book Football Frenzy.